Page 398, Part 42. Through the possibility of searching and finding, as well as through the recognition of the values, the powers, and impulses of the innermost creational nature, the way is opened for the human being to form his or her inner nature correctly, healthily, and positively, and to then maintain, in stability, free of vacillation, that which has been formed. Once the innermost creational nature is recognized, then it is like a suddenly bright glow of a fire, which can drive out the darkness of unknowledgeness and irrationality in a tiny moment. If, on the search for the innermost creational truth, the human being therefore recognizes the nature of the innermost nature, then, without any doubt, he or she experiences the greatest enlightenment of his or her life, and gains values from it which are of colossal significance for the forming, leading, and maintenance of his or her life. For this reason, the human being must familiarize himself or herself with the true nature of the innermost nature through a constant practice, in order to gain values through which he or she can form his or her inner nature, which he himself or she herself has to form, and allow it to become reality. But all this happens on the way of the innermost and inner self-cognition, as well as through the inner self-realization, which is fundamentally connected with profound thought work, and with the fact that, through the might of the thoughts, everything can be translated into action and be brought to fruition. Part 43. As the human being creates love and follows it, he or she must also live it, even if its ways are often extraordinarily hard and steep, because the purely thought-feeling-based or emotional love created by the human being is not the all-embracing and all-calming creational love, which knows neither suffering nor pain in itself. Therefore, if human-made love, and not spiritual, fine-sensitive, perceptual love, comes to the human being and wraps its wings around him or her, and he or she devotes himself or herself to it, then there is always danger hidden under the wings, and a sword which can wound the one who accepts the love. But nevertheless, the human being believes in it when it speaks to him or her in its ingratiating form, although this human-made love and its beguiling voice can shatter and destroy all dreams, as a hurricane can shatter and destroy a lovely paradise. Such is the love which is created by the human being through his or her thoughts and feelings, and which disregards the truthly love created by means of spiritual, fine, sensitive perception. It raises the human being into the highest heights and crowns him or her, but as it creates flights of fancy, it also makes him or her submissive, bends him or her, and shatters him or her. True, spiritual, fine, perceptual love is quite different from the love created by the human being through thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and which is inconstant. Constancy carries only the true love in itself, which is present in the realm of the spirit, and which the human being must bring across into the material realm of his or her consciousness, and tend and nurture as a spiritual good, which is able to manifest itself in the material realm of the consciousness. And when this creation-given love beckons to the human being, he or she should follow it and quite consciously make it his or her own. But this does not protect him or her from fellow human beings being envious of him or her because of it, and doing terrible things to him or her when they themselves are not capable of this creational love and do not understand it. Thus, if the human being is alone with this love, then also for him or her the ways can be difficult and steep, and swords can strike him or her, which injure him or her in his or her inner self, whereby he or she can fall into need and affliction, if he or she cannot strengthen and protect himself or herself with his or her love. Love is not a work of, quote, God. Rather, it is provided to the human being as a gift from the creation, which permanently exists in the innermost creational nature of the human being, where it can be drawn upon and made useful in the consciousness at any time and according to free choice and human will. This kind of creational love is not changeable, as is the thought, feeling, emotional form of love created by the human being, which can lessen in its strength, or can even transform into hate or enslavement, and so forth. However, the creational love knows effectively no such changeableness, rather only the striving for that which is higher, whereby it evolves and assumes ever more powerful and deeper forms. This creational form of love only strives to fulfill itself and grow on. Part 44. An old saying goes, quote, "Live as and when you want to, and you will wish to have lived." The sense of the saying is that, as a rule, the human being leads a life which, once he or she is dying, he or she would like to have changed. Unfortunately, it is a sad fact that it is only when most human beings are dying that they know to value their lives, and would like to have led a kind of life which is fair. An extraordinary number erroneously believe that they would still have plenty of time to still do everything necessary in life, or to be able to live the high life as well as live in unrighteousness, to then indeed still refrain from that in time, so that righteousness is still indeed sufficiently done. But they all err, because the death comes quickly and suddenly. Consequently, it is always too late to be able to still make changes to one's lifestyle and to one's attitude, and so forth. When one is dying and death approaches, and the human being is suddenly overcome by regret, then every oh so seriously meant effort for a change is illusory and an impossible thing. The most significant revelation in regard to the life and the death is therefore this: that the human being must fundamentally change his or her attitude in regard to the life and to the fulfillment of the creational laws and recommendations during the course of his or her life, and guide it along paths which are so righteous and correct that dying, one day, with the experience of being close to death, becomes the living experience of harmony between this side and the other side. Therefore, the human being must transform himself or herself from someone who only wanders aimlessly in life and is directed towards material pleasures and advantages, as well as wealth, to a human being who finds a profound motivation for the real life, from which one finds a definite direction for the evolution and the overpowering certainty that anxiety and terror do not reign at the end of the material life. Rather, really something positive and harmonious can be expected. In the place of lust, vice, and greed for money and possessions of any material kind, there must come, through the innermost creational fair nature, the striving for higher things, and the all-embracing understanding for the creation-given guidelines, the certainty that the human being must instructively form himself or herself for the life, as well as for the dying and death, and behave in such a wise that everything can flow into an all-embracing harmony. Part 45. Once the human being acknowledges, in every righteous kind and wise, his or her fellow human beings as having equal rights, then the relationship each has with the other becomes more open, more fair, more joyful, more loving, more peaceful, and more harmonious, and gives a new and deeper sense to the true state of the human being, of being human. Human beings and peoples thereby also perceive each other more effectively and more honestly, and create at least a situation which brings more understanding for each other, and thereby also a peaceful and far-reaching coexistence between the human beings, if not quite a solid basis for a real world peace. To that end, that which the human being requires, as a rule, is the cognition of this necessity, as well as the courage and the modesty to really act with all single-mindedness and efforts in this form, and to strive accordingly. To a healthy degree, the human being must make an effort towards more clarity and clear sight, as well as for honest love, joy, peace, freedom, and harmony, and direct his or her life beyond that to bringing everything to fruition through the might of the thoughts, so that, once created in this form, the nature of the inner nature and of the consciousness comes to the fore and connects with the immortality of the creational truth and its being. It is necessary to use one's lifetime to bring this fact to realization, because one's particular life is only as short and fleeting as the scattered clouds in the sky which are blown away by the winds. Birth, life, dying, and death exist like shadowy movements, and life itself is, so to speak, like lightning in the sky which flashes briefly, illuminates everything, and then goes out, which means that one's life must be used in its full radiance in order to illuminate it and the world, indeed by fulfilling the evolution in every regard. However, this is only possible when one works with all the many changes in the life, because this is the only way to effectively face the life, and to also really be able to prepare for the dying and for the death, which is always closely connected with all things of the life. Acknowledgement of one's fellow human beings is also included in that, because they are also organized into the becoming and passing, and are a part piece of the life of every individual, who cannot exist without his or her neighbor, because one life is dependent upon the other, as is determined by the creational natural laws and recommendations. But these laws and recommendations also determine the dying and the death of every single life, which must be accepted and understood, as must the life, which may often be full of trouble, suffering, difficulties, and pain, from which, however, the opportunities arise to learn and to be effectively evolutive, as well as to understand and accept the life, the dying, and the death. Everything is integrated into the becoming. Thus, however, also inevitably into the passing, which is why nothing may be considered to be, and be regarded as enduring. Otherwise, the possibility of being able to learn as a result of changes is excluded. Part 46. There are actually responsible human beings who occupy themselves in the daily existence with the life, the dying, and with the death, and who ask how it might go for them when the time of dying comes for them. However, many do not think about that at all, and simply go on living from one day to the next, without even thinking in the slightest that the state of the consciousness, in which the human being exists during his or her life, will also be exactly the one in the moments of dying and in the moment of death. Therefore, it is incredibly important to use the life to purify and evolve the consciousness, and with it, the fundamental inner nature, the personality, the character, and the morality. As long as this is still possible, because in the moments of dying and in the moment of death, neither can attempts for that be undertaken, nor can successes be achieved.